I want to thank Pastor Kelly for tonight's message. I had a whole load of questions prepared from last night. People continued to text him because they knew we were going to talk about sex.
Okay, so they kind of jumped ahead a little bit. Okay.
But I think you've answered all of those questions in the presentation.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of them, and I'm give you an opportunity to kind of really emphasize. And I'm going to try and go through some of the questions that maybe haven't been dealt with. First question. Is oral sex okay? I've heard preachers say it's okay, and I've heard some preachers say it's not okay. So is oral sex, even if you talk about in the confines of marriage, is it okay?
Let's hopefully we're assuming to talk about everything in the confines of marriage. So both those preachers are right. It's not okay and it is okay. You're like, huh? How does that make sense? The Bible says something, that the marriage bed is undefiled. And undefiled, this idea means that what takes place in the marriage bed is what takes place in the marriage bed. But here is this idea of being undefiled. Two individuals, when it comes to this idea of anything in regards to sexuality, is something that helps us become what? It's another step for us closer to becoming one. So these actions of sexual actions all should lead up to us becoming one. Now, here's the issue that takes place when it comes to the marriage bed. In order for us to become one, guess what we have to be? On the same page. So, oral sex is not okay for a couple that one of them is uncomfortable with it and the other one is totally comfortable with it. Why? Because in that act, guess what y'all not going to be? You're not going to be on the same page with that. But there are two individuals who would say, you know what? Having this way of pleasuring and pleasing one another is a part of our experience of becoming one, and we both are on the same page with that, and that's cool. So the idea is what you, your spouse, and God have worked out as what's comfortable for you within the marriage bed is what becomes appropriate within that marriage bed. Now, there's a lot of different people that can look to a lot of different outside sources. I'm going to tell you this very clearly. In Hebrews, and I'll get the text in just a moment to read the whole thing because I did a whole study on that with my church. Marriage bed is undefiled. In other words, that means that there are actually, and it's going to give us, and I'll get to it in just a second, two ways that the bed becomes undefiled. And oral sex is not one of them. But it does become defiled if one person wants to do that and they don't. So let me just add something to that question. Here's what I do. It's hilarious. This last couple I did, I always have a sex talk in my pre-engagement counseling. And here's what I ask the couples to do. I say, I want you to write down a list of everything that you would like sexually, and then I want you to write down a list of everything you would like sexually. And you should have seen the dude, man. He turned beet red. Because he just did not, he's like, I really don't want to do that. And so there's kind of like, well, why do you do that? Because here's what I want us to be able to do. Here's what happens. You go into a marriage, right? And I rarely, unfortunately, have been able to take two couples that have never had any other sexual experiences. The couples I usually have, they've done something with someone else. And some of those things are in the wrong context, but it's okay if it's in the right context. And so here's what ends up happening. One lady loves oral sex. The guy can't stand it. They get married, never talk about it, and then there's that awkward moment. Then there's that frustration. Then there's that anger. So here's what I ask couples to do. Let's get everyone's expectations out on the table. Let's see what you are looking forward to, you're looking forward to. Let's see where they don't match, how we need to get them to match, if they should or if they not, so that if you move forward, you will never ask them to do something they've already stated they're uncomfortable with. Does that make sense, everybody? So that's a long way to answer that, but I want to really, get into that. It's you, your spouse, and God who determine what happens in that marriage bed.
Hello? Hold on. So I've been having sex outside marriage, and I want to stop.
I love the way you ask these questions.
I'm trying to make it personal. I'm getting into the zone. I'm channeling the person, I'm having sex outside of marriage, and I really want to stop now.
Okay.
But I can't.
All right.
I'm trying everything. I'm writing Bible texts on condoms and, I'm really trying hard to stop. But I can't.
Yeah.
What advice can you give me to refrain from doing this deed?
Man, you actually kind of messed me up because I was going to tell you to write Bible texts on condoms. No. Here's the thing. I'm always very transparent. My wife is not the only person I've had sex with. And so here's one of the things I did when we have sex. And let's be real, it's hard to stop because it's good and it feels great. So when I really made a decision that, I don't want to do this, here's one of the things that I asked myself. I said, okay, what are the common denominators that when I do it all seem to line up prior to? So for Michael Kelly, there were 3 things that kind of lined up for me. Number 1, we were always in a place alone. We were always somewhere alone. And when I say alone, unfortunately, we could be alone at a park. That's still alone. It's still, for us, that was still what alone was. Apartments, all that. So I said, number 1, it was alone. Number 2, this is just Michael Kelly, all right? Number 2, if I saw something on, let's say, TV, whether it had to be a movie, a commercial, or something like that had like some sexual connotation, I found that was usually also a factor. And then number 3 for me, it was music. I mean, that was during the time where it was Jodeci and, Mary J., R. Kelly, all those different kind of cats. And so I found that when those 3 things happened at any point throughout my day, that kind of created an easier environment for me to go into that. And so when I figured that out, here's what I said, is when something started to come on the TV, I would be a little weird about it, and I'd be like, I really can't do that, because I knew that was one piece of the puzzle. And so what you have to do, if you continue to have sex, you got to step back and say, okay, every time I have sex, there are certain things that happen before that take place. And I'm going to see what those things are, and I'm going to change the variable in the equation. If you change a variable in the equation, you usually get a different outcome. Does that make sense? So you got to really study yourself and say, when I listen to this music, it gets me kind of going. Or it could be for some of you, when we text after 10:30, nothing good happens. Yeah, it just doesn't happen. Or you know what? I know he says, that this picture is okay or whatever. But you know what? Every time I text him a picture, we end up doing something. So I'm not going to do that anymore. And so you got to figure what that is and then make sure that you cut that out of the equation. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And I'm going to tell you one of the same things that we do over and over again. Some of us just pray. That's not enough. Prayer is not enough. If somebody's hungry, don't just pray. Give them food. You see what I'm saying? So don't try and pray like, oh God, we're laying here naked, help us. You're done. It's over. Yeah.
Can you hear me? No, can Pastor hear me?
I can hear you. I'll repeat.
Great, thank you. So earlier you... Hello? Oh, great.
There you go.
So earlier you spoke about when you had the hearts on the stage and, you were like, God never intended that... Sex is like a representation of our relationship with God, and God never intended us to leave. Mm-hmm. Before I ask this question, I'll preface it with saying I'm not talking about the gift of singleness. Mm-hmm. But if somebody is actively, it's not funny, that's a thing apparently. If somebody is actively avoiding a relationship with somebody else, so say like I'm a girl and I'm actively avoiding being in a relationship with a guy, is that a reflection of my commitment to God? Like, does that mean... Or not necessarily mean, but does that kind of indicate that I'm kind of running away or not trying to commit to God as well?
No, that's a great question. Let me say this. Anyone who's single and wants to stay that way, I want to make something very clear, and 1 Corinthians talks about this, you need to have the gift of singleness. Now, why is singleness called a gift? Because if you're single, you also are going to be celibate. So all these folk who walk around talking about, I'm single, I don't need somebody, you really don't need anybody. And what that means is you have a gift. That means you don't need companionship. You don't need that kind of affection and all that kind of stuff that a married couple would get. And there's a reason why you have the gift. Does anyone know why you might have that gift? Not so you can just be this person who walks around and says, I have the gift of singleness. But Paul says that the gift of singleness is for this reason. Because those who are married are concerned about the things of married folk, a family and all that stuff. But the individuals who are single, they dedicate themselves to the work of who? To the work of God. So I'm going to tell you this right now. The people who should have the most ministry positions in the church should not be the married folk. It actually should be the single folk. Because the married folk have got a divided kind of loyalty that God understands and respects. It's like, yeah, that's your family, you got to take care of that. But the single folk, y'all ain't got nothing else to do but do the work of Jesus Christ. And that's just what the Bible says. That's just real talk. Y'all need to be busy for Jesus. And the reason that we're busy doing other stuff is because we ain't busy for Jesus. But I think it's a great thing. No, it doesn't mean that you're not pursuing a relationship with God. Remember, we just said that sex is one of those things, and that's what sex is for you to know God more fully. It's not the only thing that helps you know God more fully. So the talk really tonight was to say this gift called sex is one of those things that God says, I want you to experience to know me fully. It doesn't mean if you're not experiencing it, you don't know me fully, because we know there's several eunuchs in the Bible who knew God in ways we probably never will. And, obviously a eunuch is somebody who doesn't have sex. So, great question. It's a great question.
Question. My battery keeps dying. Question from online.
Okay.
If I can't do the dirty and I can't masturbate, how do I stop myself from becoming overloaded?
Well, I'll tell you this: your body naturally does stuff, brother. In the meantime, no, it does. It really does stuff in the meantime, so you won't be overloaded. So you don't have to worry about that. Your body naturally releases your semen. So don't try and play that. Hey, honey, I'm backed up and I have a stomach ache. Help me out. None of that kind of stuff. Yeah. So you're good. You're okay. You're cool.
If I love my boyfriend or girlfriend, why is it so wrong for me to express my love with the ultimate act of love? Let's stop there and then I'll...
Because you actually haven't given them the ultimate commitment. So it's not fair to expect the ultimate act of love when you haven't given them the ultimate act of commitment. The two have to go together. So there are other ways that you can express your love based on the level of commitment that you have. And when that commitment goes to the ultimate level, then you can show one of the ultimate expressions of love.
Why do people...
Yeah, sure, yeah.
If the Sabbath is all about communion with God, surely sex on the Sabbath, which is communion with your husband or wife, is wrong.
Yeah. If the Sabbath is all about only communion with God, then why do you go to church and hang out with other people? You fellowship with other people. If that's all it was about, is only communion with God, then we should stay in our homes and keep the Sabbath that way. Because when you're out in church, you're having fun conversations, you're connecting with people, you go to potlucks after church, and what do? You commune with other people. You connect with other people. Some people like to use the idea of refrain from doing thy own pleasure on the Sabbath day. Well, let me tell you something. If you're doing sex right, it's not your own pleasure, because in sex, my job is to please you. Your job is to please me, so we're pleasing each other. No, so here's the other thing. Preaching is very pleasurable for me. It is. I enjoy preaching. I love preaching the Word of God. And I do it on the Sabbath. Why? Because my preaching isn't just for me. It edifies the God who I am serving on that particular day, on the Sabbath day. And so let me tell you something, why I want you to know something just real quick. Let me tie the two together. Jesus heals the man on the Sabbath, right? Now he heals the guy with a withered hand. That's not an emergency. You could wait a couple hours because you've been that way for a couple years. Jesus could have said, you know what, let's just wait. The Sabbath is going on. This is inappropriate for us to do on the Sabbath. But Jesus proves a point. He says, I'm going to deal with someone who's not an emergency on the Sabbath so you guys understand that my healing someone on the Sabbath actually is setting someone free and in turn drawing them closer to me. Here's why people have a problem with sex on the Sabbath. Because they've separated it from the God of the Sabbath. Because if sex, like we explained today, is about my oneness with my spouse and oneness with God, why would I not want to celebrate that on this holy day? Now, if sex with my spouse takes me away from doing everything else, if I'm like, you know what? I know it's 11:15, the church is waiting for me to come, but you know what? We just going to experience communion today. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's different. I'm not talking about that. But how can we say sex is holy and you can't do what's holy on a holy day? Unless we don't think it's holy. And if anything came from God, I'm going to think that thing is holy. That's just me. So, now, do you have to have sex on the Sabbath? No. But don't go around telling somebody that they can't. That's just not accurate to the principles and even the scriptures we use to try and put that in place. And I'm open for debate if someone wants to talk to me afterwards about that.
Let me just remind everyone that the prayer room is open for anybody that would like to go and receive prayer.
So if your pastors are late or extra happy on Sabbath, you know what? Right?
This is a good one. The Bible says that the husband and wife should not withhold themselves from each other except for prayer and fasting.
Yeah.
So if I want to have sex with my wife every day, twice a day, she should really give it up.
Yeah. So that's a great thing. So if I can just share with you my counseling and some of the things I do in my counseling session. One of them is I asked a couple the question. I said, how often do you want to have sex? And usually they say 2 times a week, or some will say 3 times a week or whatever. And I said, okay, that's cool. I said, here's what the goal should be. And I said, well, he said, there's a goal, there's a number. I said, yes. I said, how many times should we have sex? I said, every single day. Should be something you're good with. And they're like, whoa, every single day? I said, yeah, because what you don't want to create in your marriage is, hey, babe, it's been twice a week, and so you're good, because that's what the expectation was. No, it shouldn't be that way. The reason I say every day is because you want to be able to always have the opportunity and the moment for you to go there. That's okay. So we don't put a quota on it. We don't put a limit on it. We go there. Now, the thing is, there's a lot of different things that can take place in a relationship that stress it out, that make sex a little difficult to do. But here's the attitude I want people to have when it comes to sex. It's the same thing when it comes to different likes and dislikes. Sex should be, and the joy from sex should come from, you bringing pleasure to somebody else. That's what really marriage actually really is about. Marriage is not about what you can get from somebody. Marriage is you can't wait to give somebody something. See, I always get nervous when people say they want to get married because they can't wait to get. The successful marriages are the ones that say, I can't wait to give. Now, here's how the scenario then goes. I'm a husband, and then somebody there is a wife, and the husband is like, man, I really would love to be able to commune with you. But the wife is like, dang, I'm kind of tired, and maybe I got some other stuff going, but you know what? I love making him happy. I just love doing that. And so you know what? I'm a little tired. I'm a little bit out of shape. But you know what? This thing about me, let me, babe, come on. I'm not going to lay here like a fish. I'm not going to act bothered when you're doing it. I'm going to get joy. And I might not necessarily want to for me, but man, I just love how happy this makes you. And then here's what the brother's going to do. Man, that's my wife. That's my boo. And I know she's attracted to me. I just love bringing her joy. And the joy she's going to get right now is a nap. And so you know what, babe? We cool. Let's wait a little bit. Why? Because you tired, you sleepy. Do you see what's happening now? There should be an argument. You sleep. No, let's do it. You sleep. No, let's do it. You sleep. No, let's do it. Why? Because they're trying to out-please the other. That's how it should be. So this idea of withholding and you want to do it 2 times a day, that's awesome. I think that's great. Maybe 3 if you can. But within that place, you need to find where you can please your spouse, and pleasing her might give her a break.
In the eyes of God, when I sleep with somebody, we're married, And so is it true that if I then go into another relationship with somebody else, I'm committing adultery? Or if I get married and I marry somebody who's had a sexual history with somebody else, I'm committing adultery with them?
Yeah. So I'm sorry for answering these questions sometimes a little longer, but I just want to make sure we get it. Might not see you guys again. So marriage in the Bible is not only a spiritual thing, but it's also a legal thing. Did you notice that? As a matter of fact, when Jesus came up with the laws of divorce, it wasn't simply about spirituality. What was it also about? Legality. Because here's what he said. Moses told you that you can put your wife away for a bill of divorcement, then go ahead and get remarried. So what was happening? Guys would say, you can't cook right, I'm out of here, I'm gone. And when a woman was divorced and left by herself, it was more difficult for her to remarry. When a woman's not married, she really has no life during biblical times. And so there were these laws that were in place that really weren't able to protect the woman the way they should. So Jesus comes in and says, y'all ain't gonna do that no more. So if you're gonna divorce somebody, you're not gonna be able to marry somebody else, except it be for this. Why? Because I wanna make it difficult for you to leave, because when you leave that woman all out by herself. So I don't want you to just be able to do that. So why am I breaking that down that particular way? Because Jesus says that marriage is not only a spiritual thing, but it's also a legal thing. So for you to be married to somebody, it's not just this idea of you two having sex and becoming one. That might be the spiritual aspect of it, but there's a legal part of it as well, where we respect the laws of our land. Like Jesus respected the laws that they had established as far as bills of divorcement, but he adjusted them, and that's why they got to the point they're like, dude, if that's the case, who then should be married? So, no, if you sleep with someone, you're not married to them. Don't pull that game. Well, baby, we already did. So, in the eyes of God, you're done, right? No. You sleep with someone? No, you're not married. Now, if you go to a court, get married, and then don't have sex, guess what even the courts say? You're not married, because the two have to go together. The legal part and the physical part. And so, no, you're not married if you have sex. Now, in Bible days, they did some stuff that's a little different, but obviously the culture is different as well.
So most of my friends, they don't want to marry virgins because they feel that these virgins don't know what they're doing, obviously, because they don't. What advice would you give them?
First of all, I appreciate the question. I was going to keep it real. You got some silly friends because it's so silly. Let me tell you two testimonies very quickly. I promise I'll run through so we get these questions. My boy, he is awesome, amazing, and I envy him. The only person that he's ever experienced sexual intimacy with is his spouse. It's the only person. He's saying, why do I envy that? Because let me tell you what happens in your brain. When we have sexual intercourse or experience orgasm with somebody, there is, and I don't want to get into all the technical jargon of it, but there's a part of our brain that says pleasure is connected to that person. Are you guys following me so far? So I ejaculate, I orgasm with somebody, my brain says, oh, that person is where pleasure comes from. Hence the reason, if you notice this, when you get around that person again, even when you're not doing anything, certain things start to happen to your body. Because your brain is sending a signal, oh, when my eyes see them, and we know what happened last time, we know pleasure comes from them. And so that's good because my body's connected there. But then here's what we do. We mess around with them. It doesn't work out. Then we mess around with somebody else. And our brain says, wait a second. I thought it was that person we were supposed to hook up with. Okay, no. It's this one. So then when that person gets around, we connect with them. But then we don't mess with them anymore. We mess with somebody else. And our brain is like, whoa, wait a second. It wasn't this one. It wasn't that one. It's supposed to be that one. Okay, cool. Got it. It's that one. Then we don't mess around with that one anymore, and we find another one, and then this one we say, I want to get married. Now, brain, I want to only be attracted to her. The brain is like, no, it doesn't work that way, because you have trained us to get pleasure from multiple people. So now, when you go into a marriage, here's the thing that my boy legitimately does not have. It's legitimate. He's tempted in other ways, but it's not sexually, because his brain doesn't even know what it's like to be pleasured by somebody else. That is legit, because I'm just going to keep this 100% real. Anytime we have connected with somebody else and done this, you don't want a virgin because you want them to know what it is, let me tell you, that stuff stays in your head, and they're always going to have a place where the devil can reach down in the cerebral cortex and pull out the experience that they had prior to you, and then you do this little thing that you really don't want to do in marriage: compare and contrast. And I envy my boy because he has nothing to compare it to. And he and his wife learned together, and they got 4 kids, so they obviously figured it out. So, does that make sense? So, I mean, why would you? It's great if 2 people don't know anybody else and they figure it out together and you have nothing to compare it to. I promise you, when y'all get married, after fooling around with everybody else, and you in that bed, and you're going to be making love to your spouse, the devil going to reach inside and he's going to pull something out. You say, well, the devil can't put stuff in our minds. He didn't put it there. We did. He just brings out what's already there. And this is real talk. I'm just keeping it real.
This is a deep one. Pastor, you said if both partners consent to oral sex that it's fine. Mm-hmm. Does that mean if both partners consent to anal sex that is okay?
Yeah. Great question. Great question. And we'll be real with this. The Bible does mention something, and when it talks about this idea of being undefiled, there are a couple things that the Bible specifically mentions, not there in that text in the book of Hebrews, but in other places when it looks at the principles of sex. So, although in that particular text where it says a marriage bed is undefiled except it be for, and I'll get to that in just a moment. Here's the idea. Bringing someone else into your marriage bed, is that acceptable? No, that's not going to be acceptable. And we see other places in the Bible where there are parameters for that, where it's like, yep, no, don't do that, undefiled, yes, but that little thing right here, don't do. Now, here's one of the things that I lean on, is this idea of anal sex has been talked about in a lot of different ways from the standpoint of sodomizing. And sodomizing is also another way that you can put with anal sex. Somebody debated with me whether or not sodomy could also be applied to oral sex. And when you look at the original language, not the English, but also the original that's here in the Hebrew, I don't get that. You do not get that. But you do get this idea of an anal kind of penetration. And so while I will be open and say that could be a gray area for some people, in gray areas, I usually err on the side of not doing. Does that make sense? So, yeah, I would stay away from that. And then also, I think there's some practical reasons that you stay away from that as well. There's a lot of health issues that can come with that. Now, I want to tell you something. Oral sex, there are health issues if you don't bathe, if you don't, if you have already transmitted disease, but you can be as clean as a whistle back there. But if somebody starts ripping and tearing stuff, that turns into an issue there. So that's why I think those two. So I would say bringing somebody else in, either literally or virtually. Y'all catch that? Pornography, bringing someone else in the bedroom is not acceptable. And I would say anal sex, I'd lean away from that. And those are the reasons why.
As a virgin, when I start dating a guy, when is it appropriate for me to tell him that sex is off the menu?
Yeah, right away. Values. That's values. If you value waiting till you get married, let him know right away, because he might not value the same thing or she might not value the same thing. They might be wanting that from you. Let them know right away. And I'm going to tell you this right now. If you let them know right away and they try, bounce. Because what that means is they do not respect your value and your boundary. And here's what in my sermon on sexuality for men, here's what I think our job is as men. And I know I'm giving it to you outside of context. Our job is to preserve our women's virtue. That's our job. I believe that's our job, to be able to do that. So, as a dude, if you want to have sex, and she's like, nope, we're not going to do this, you're being a man when you can help her, even when she's trying to pull your pants off. Your response is, baby, I'm a real man, and I'm going to take care of you in the right way, because I know later on you're going to look at me different, and this ain't right, and a real man preserves the virtue that you're trying to protect right now as well.
I'm married, but I have no interest in sex whatsoever. Is there something wrong with me? No, guys. These are real questions from real people.
Yeah, and some people might be right here.
So let's please be sensitive.
There is something as being asexual. Usually asexual people, they still do get married because they desire the companionship and living together and doing life together, but not the actual act of sex together. So what I would do is go to your doctor first and see if there's a chemical imbalance. Those things actually do happen. There are things that they can give you to help you with that. If it's not a chemical imbalance and you just don't want to have sex, that is a legitimate problem. And please, people, don't think that there are a lot of married couples that are having a lot of sex. I counsel couples all the time that have been married 10 years and have had sex 3 times. And they have no chemical imbalance. They just don't. And it's used as a weapon and all kinds of things. So I want to say this. To be married and not have sex is not appropriate. Unless there's something physically wrong. If there's something physically wrong with you, that's different. But for you to be married and not have sex, that is absolutely, completely the tool and work of the devil, and it is not a marriage that reflects God. It's just not at all. Now again, I'm going to need to be clear. If you have physical issues, that's a completely different issue. But y'all need to be having sex if you're going to be married. If not, you should just be real good friends.
I was molested in my teens by a member of my family who's older than me. I've since had sex with several partners.
Yeah.
And my perception of what sex is has been affected.
Yeah.
How can I get out of this mindset?
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to tell you it's a real deep answer, easy answer, therapy. You've got to go to therapy. Not counseling, therapy. There's going to be very few pastors that are equipped to deal with what you just described. And so go to therapy because what you have to do is deal with the hurt, number one. Come to grips with what happened to you. Understand that what happened to you does not have to define you. And then what you're going to have to then do, as you said, and the therapist will give you a plan, let them know you're a Christian, that you have principles for the Word of God, and they will help you redefine what sexuality is for you. Then if you're going to get into a relationship, it's very important that when you get close to that person, and you're going to marry them, let them know about that because sex for you might not be something you can jump into and are very loose and easy with. It might be a little apprehensive. One of the reasons some people, when I do those lists on what's appropriate for you as a couple and not before you get married, and I'm so glad that this one sister said, you know what, I'm cool with only 1 or 2 positions. And the guy heard that, and he's like, oh, man, we got another, crazy on my hand. And you can see the look on his face. And here's what I ask every couple to do. Everything that they say they're not okay with, I need the why. I need the why. Because a why doesn't fly because my parents said so. That's not simply okay with me. So her why was this. I was raped, and the positions I was raped in was this and that. And so any time that I get in those positions sexually, my mind goes back to my rape. Now, what do you think do you think his attitude changed? Absolutely. He was like, oh, baby, we'll never, ever again will we ever think or talk about that. And it made sense. So that's the reason I'm saying that is that's how deep that can be. And so you've got to, tell your partner about that because there might be some things because of that you're not ready to get into sexually because of some of the scars and memories that it brings up. But therapy.
I'm going to give you a little bit of time to answer this because I've heard your explanation on this. In this day and age, we are being told by the media that gender is a social construct and you can choose your gender, and I'm even going to throw in sexual orientation. Or what does the Bible say and how do we deal with this in relation to sex?
Yeah, so there are people who have different genetic issues. They were finding, and this is, I think it was in the Dominican Republic, yes, I was looking at this particular study, that there would be these girls that they look like a girl, they have a vagina, and then at 11 and 12 years old, their scrotum would come through. And so they were stuck because they were raised, of course, as girls, but now they're starting to get boy parts, and the parents were left in this amazing predicament. How am I going to, continue with my child? In some cases, you found in this study that they would ask the child, well, what would you like to do at 11 and 12 years old? So in those situations, I think that's a little different. And we know that sin has just messed up even our genes, right? So that's unfortunate. But when we have come into this world with a very clear sense that we are male or female, and we don't have that genetic kind of chromosomal issue, then that's what we are to be. And usually what you'll find is an individual who wants to move from being a male to a female is because there's another issue that has taken place within their socialization, and this is idea of a little bit of nature versus nurture, that has kind of made them feel that they cannot operate within that frame. But when you are clearly a woman and clearly a man, that's what God expects for you to be, regardless of what your socialization is. Some genetic issues, that's one thing. I don't know if there's another part of that question that was about, do you choose your attraction or your sexual orientation? Man, I have a whole sermon on that, so I'd hate to halfway get into it. So if I can just wait on that.
Okay, thank you, Pastor Kelly.
Cool.
Yes.
Cool.